The Yellow Brick Road. This video does not reflect the actual views of real people. These are actors playing a role to entertain audiences. No persons or animals were harmed in the making of this video. Gosh, I love YouTube and I love Google.
Welcome to the Yellow Brick Road. I'm Jordan, this is James, this is Rebecca, and this is Dan. And today we're going to be talking about social justice warriors. We're going to split this up into three sections. Intersectionality, starting with a Ben Shapiro video. Bodily autonomy, starting with some guy I never heard of's video. And feminism, using Jordan Peterson as our video example. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch the videos, skip through it a bit, we'll pause it at certain points, give our opinions, then most likely give our solutions to everything. Before we start, does anyone have anything to say?
Yeah, Ben Shapiro's about to destroy me. He's about to destroy.
Ben Shapiro's going to destroy our world too. Okay.
Only that, he'll use that title in his own channel.
I know. So our first video is Ben Shapiro, What is Intersectionality? It's through the PragerU. Yeah.
You probably think your opinions matter. You probably think you're an individual with unique experiences, thoughts, and ambitions. Well, I hate to break it to you, but according to current leftist orthodoxy, you're wrong. You see, your opinion only matters relative to your identity, and where that identity ranks on the hierarchy of intersectionality. If you're now thinking, what the hell are you talking about? You haven't spent much time on a modern college campus.
You have. That's actually who you ever debate is fucking college kids. Just want to throw that out there.
Intersectionality is a form of identity politics, in which the value of your opinion depends on how many victim groups you belong to. At the bottom of the totem pole is the person everybody loves to hate, the straight white male. And who's at the top? Well, it's very hard to say, because new groups claim victim status all the time. No one can keep track. So,
what about like sororities, like in campuses? Yeah, where they make you be part of a group.
Well, what he does is he goes from state to state, college to college, giving lectures to college kids, then allows them to do like a Q&A session, and then he just verbally berates them.
So it's basically his claim to fame. That's his claim to fame.
Yeah. So before we start, do you have any disagreements with what Shapiro's saying so far?
Well, he seems to have a fundamental lack of understanding of what intersectionality actually is. And it's problematic that he refers to marginalized groups of people as groups looking to claim victim status. He doesn't seem to understand.
I assumed that going in. Yeah. I'm sure I already assumed he was going to twist things around to.
I already know he's a
so that his point is correct.
I already know he loves collectivism, so I'm expecting.
He's already made up his mind.
All right, continue.
how does this intersectionality thing play out? Something like this. Let's say you're a gay white woman. Your opinion matters, but less than that of a gay black woman. Why? Because while all women are oppressed by the patriarchy, and all gays are oppressed by the heterosexual majority, blacks have a victim status that whites obviously don't. Of course, a gay black woman's victim status is less than that of a black trans woman, who ranks below a black Muslim trans woman, and so on.
What is that? These like little cartoons. These guys are dead.
Less than that of a black trans woman, who ranks below a black Muslim trans woman.
I just want to say his little cartoons are highly problematic.
Yeah, they're assholes. It's because this person named Zoe almost wrecked him on live TV, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, you'll cut that out. You'll go up in an ambulance.
Yeah, she was a cameraman for a former cameraman for like KTLA or something, some LA-based news thingy, and he filmed the Chicago or South LA riots and shit like that. So it's that guy's seen some stuff.
Yeah.
Or gal. My bad. I apologize. Right.
And so on. The more memberships you can claim in oppressed groups, the more aggrieved you are, and the higher you rank. Get it? Good, because it's about to get even more complicated. Intersectionality takes your victim status and uses it as the basis for creating alliances with other victim groups. 30 or 40 years ago, activists encouraged racial solidarity among blacks to combat oppression. But today, that's not enough. Today's activists demand blacks make common cause with other allegedly oppressed people. Gays, lesbians, transgenders, Palestinians, Native Americans,
I love how he slides that like that. Israeli-Palestinian conflict in there. Just slide that in right there.
Yeah.
I know what this guy does. He's basically
He
the guy.
rushed it.
He's the guy in the ballroom who dances around with whoever he wants, and there's a dead body in the middle of the room, and he knows it's there. He just skips over it.
Why are Native Americans
Psychopath.
last, do you think?
Fucking psychopath.
Any comments?
What?
What do you think the Native Americans are last?
I don't think there's.
Yeah, I don't think there's an order to it.
It's arbitrary, probably.
Other than the Palestinian thing.
That sticks out to me.
That doesn't really fit in what they were trying to
like,
portray. It's just randomly in there.
Bulldozing homes with people in them. Huh? Listen, the border's here now. Get out of your house. Like what?
Well, one's an actual country. These are other. The rest of these guys are like social groups, and that's just a country.
Wow.
However, here's the logic. A black gay and a Hispanic gay may not belong to the same victim group racially, but they do belong to the same victim group on the basis of their sexuality. By focusing on the places where various victim identities intersect, intersectionality creates a united us versus them paradigm. Righteous victims rising up together to fight the oppressor, those dreaded straight white men. This explains why at a rally protesting the treatment of Palestinians by Israel, you might see a contingent of lesbian activists. That's intersectionality at work.
Or it's a moral issue, you asshat. Right? If you have innocent people being killed, other people who may be in like a situation where there's some sort of oppression going on, they're going to jump up and say something too. Like, solidarity, man.
It's odd to me how he's talking about individualism, and he's obviously a full-blown collectivist.
Oh, 100%. He's such a collectivist that he views the other side as the same thing. That's why he says the left. It's like, what does that mean? That sounds like a shitload of people. Yeah. But he collectivizes them and makes an argument against this idea that he calls the left.
I don't like when he calls the left because there's a wide spectrum. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? Explain.
There's Democrats, there's corporate Democrats, there's neocons, there's progressives, there's liberals, there's all these things going on. I don't know.
They're so united by their victim status that it doesn't matter if Islamists throw gays off of buildings or murder female family members who defy their father's wishes.
Why Islam?
Yeah.
He's what's the word?
Right now he's conflating.
Yeah, conflating.
He's
generalizing.
Yeah. He's conflating Islamic terrorists with a country.
With a group
Palestine.
of people who are being oppressed.
Yeah.
Well, what is a terrorist to him? You know, there's definition of a terrorist.
A lot of these guys just think if you're Muslim, you lean towards that.
I know Muslim people that come to the gym all the time, and they don't act like
there's
terrorists.
I believe there's 1.8 billion fucking Muslims in the world.
What
if they wanted to just blow us all up, it would have happened. I think. I don't know.
What Ben will tell you when the camera's on, it's a sleeper cell, Dan. Be careful. That's what he would tell you, probably.
Well, what he's doing, he's just protecting Israel.
Oh, and that tweet he sent out about 8 years ago is very telling as well.
Ah.
Should use that as
I should use that as a thumbnail.
You should, yeah.
All right.
Victim solidarity trumps all other considerations. The term intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, a professor of law at Columbia University. She explains that intersectionality was my attempt to make feminism, anti-racist activism, and anti-discrimination law do what I thought they should: highlight the multiple avenues through which racial and gender oppression were experienced. To Crenshaw, America is a terrible place full of victim groups, each with their particular set of grievances.
Notice how you read a quote,
yeah,
and then as soon as he got out of quote, he started just making up an explanation, like making up her answer for her.
He's kind of portraying this incorrectly. Like, she didn't invent intersectionality. She just coined the term. The idea of intersectionality existed for close to a century before she coined the term.
He's misusing the quotes.
He's misrepresenting information.
Well, it's easy to argue against. If you make up the opposing argument's position, it's easy to argue against.
Why shouldn't these victim groups get together and form a political coalition unified by the belief that the majority society has harmed them? That some professor tucked away in an ivory tower would come up with this nonsense is not surprising. What is surprising and disturbing is that so many people actually go along with it. America is the most open, least racist nation on the planet. That Professor Crenshaw is free to spin her nonsensical theories and get...
Did you just say that, like, randomly?
Did he say nonsense? Did I hear that?
Well, he said it's, what did he say, the least racist,
That's
whatever?
definitely stating your opinion as fact.
Yeah.
It's like, I have these numbers by the polls. Where do those numbers? Where do those polls come from? That's not important right now.
this nation on the planet.
Yeah, that's... I don't know. Where does he get that from?
Least racist nation on the planet.
I just used to think of him as really ignorant, but I think he's a controlled opposition.
He should put different colors like on different states or something. If you wanted to like state something like that, you know, where's the stats, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then how do you even measure for that?
How do you measure levels of racism to compare?
People are just openly like, yeah, I did it. I'm racist. Like in each state, like come on.
In the
Who's
year,
that openly?
the year 2050, we'll have mind reading technology. We'll jot it down. Alright.
That Professor Crenshaw is free to spin her nonsensical theories and get paid well for it should offer adequate proof of that. And since when do you have to live someone's experience in order to understand them? You don't have to live as a slave in order to understand that slavery is cruel and wrong. You don't have to live as a woman in order to recognize the evil of rape. Finally, and most important,
Yeah, Ben, but you might want to categorize things.
Is he implying that only women have to deal with rape? Because it seems like that's what he's implying.
He's implying in an argument, I think.
I think he's trying to narrow it down to simple square peg and square hole type thing. So it's just easy to argue against, and it makes the other side look simple.
That's his job to, let's see, what's it called? My point of view, I'm just going to push yours down all the way.
intersectionality promotes the biggest hoax of all, that we aren't individuals who are to be judged on the basis of how we act, but are merely members of groups to be judged on the basis of our group identity.
This is the last guy I would ask for as far as what individualism is.
Yeah.
The very last guy.
In other words, you and I, as individuals with our unique experiences, thoughts, and ambitions, count for nothing. Our racial and sexual identity count for everything. It's hard to imagine an idea less likely to produce a free and equal America than that. But what do I know? I'm just a straight white male. I'm Ben Shapiro for Prager University.
That's who you are, Ben. Yes. If I asked him, who are you? Well, I'm Ben, and I'm a Republican, and I'm... No. I asked, who are you? He probably couldn't give me an answer.
Yeah. So, do you have like a replacement definition for Ben here?
Well, let's see what the actual definition of intersectionality is. An analytic framework that attempts to identify how interlocking systems of power impact those who are most marginalized in society. And it considers various forms of social stratification. I don't see any issue with intersectionality, and I don't understand why he would have an issue with it, because his definition of it is basically made up, and it's not what intersectionality is about at all. Like the main thing about intersectionality to me is that you won't step on other marginalized groups of people to further your own cause. So take, for instance, the suffragettes about a century ago. It's pretty well known, like white women advocated only for white women to get the vote, and they actively tried to prevent women of color, brown women, from getting the vote. So an intersectional approach would never allow for that kind of behavior. So I don't see any issue with intersectionality, and I think it is essential.
Okay. James?
Yes.
Since now you have two different basically definitions of it. What do you say?
I think one is clearly trying to get in that, how do I say this? Like I said, I think he's controlled opposition. So obviously there's some sort of agenda to really... See, it's tough because he has intentions involved, you know? And there's this one video that comes to mind where it really exposes himself as some sort of religious ideology going on.
Uh-huh.
Or to the point where he's like, why are you arguing this shit, man? Like, what's driving you? You know? Like, why any of this? Why?
Yeah, he seems to have a beef with transgender people.
Well, I think his issue is it reminds me of this quote: when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. So I think that's kind of where he's coming from with everything. He's misinterpreting these social justice movements as, oh, they're trying to oppress me, because he's so used to having privilege. He doesn't want to admit that he has privilege.
Well,
I think he's been told what to say.
Him in particular, yes. He's had privilege, I think, his whole life.
Well,
but that's not everyone, right?
I'm just taking him at face value as assuming that he actually believes everything he's saying. I mean, that's obviously up for debate if he's just a mouthpiece or for someone else, or if he actually believes this. But I'm just trying to take him at face value.
I think he has a further goal in mind. What he's doing is he's gathering a fan base by arguing these points, because there are white men who aren't as privileged as him, but if he cultivates their ideas, takes their ideas and expresses them in a certain way on a large platform, he's gonna, yank them in. Like, you're on my team now. Come on, vote Republican.
That's why he has fans. I'm like, how can you be a fan of an idea, like a fan? Which means, go Ben. Yes. It's like you already said.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dan.
Yeah, I guess I think he's using this video as a ploy, like you said, like for a bigger goal of his, not so much as the problem with intersectionality or whatever. Like, it's like a disguise,
Well, then this makes me think, if he doesn't actually have these views, and they're not his views, but he's willing to be the mouthpiece for these views, what kind of person is willing to so grossly misrepresent themselves for a paycheck? And if that's what he's doing, why should we listen to anything he has to say?
I'll listen to what he has to say, just so I can chop it down in front of everybody.
I'd have to listen to more of his videos to see what kind of person.
It has to be done. Like, I would even pull him aside, like, dude, you sure you want to do this? You should.
Yeah, and also I'm not sure if it's for money.
No, I think he's an inauthentic person who's conditioned from a very young age to say and or think whatever that he was told to do.
And I think he has a certain ideology in the background that he doesn't really tell everybody.
No, there's like one video out there that's
whether it's religious or social, like if he truly believes like this is the right way, but I haven't really studied these ideas, but I need to look at them and find the right-wing version of it, or a right-wing response to it, and then use my platform to convince other people of it.
I just wish he had like more stats though, because like if you have like numbers or like things to support your comments, then it becomes more professional or like scientific terminology. Yeah. But since I don't see any of those numbers, and he just put like, remember the bar was like all the way full on the one gender, and like all the way on the other one. It's like, where are you getting that number? Like, you just making that up?
Use simple, digestible images.
Yeah.
So like that's why I didn't really
capture the hearts and minds.
I didn't take this serious because
like a politician.
Even if he has like
it's
actual
fun.
like
It's fun
stats and reference points, sometimes I throw that out the window, because if we're talking about existential ideas, I don't use like science. Like, see, James, you're a part of this demographic right here. The numbers say so. Like, the numbers can't tell you how I think, man, or how I feel.
It's kind of clear how he thinks, or he's trying to make the population feel like what he's trying to do.
When you're on the same side in every issue, it's like I think there's a problem there. I can't see how he's on the Republican side on every issue. I don't see how someone's an individual and doing that at the same time.
Yeah.
Unless he invented it somehow.
No,
but he doesn't.
Partners.
But
everyone wants to forget.
When I first looked into intersectionality, I thought it was more of like a categorizing situation rather than an actual social system. So is that the case? Is it just to categorize injustice, or is it an actual replacement for a system?
Well, I think the intersectional approach, it's important to understand what's going on and to understand how all these different ways of inequality function. and how they interact.
Okay.
In order to ultimately dismantle them so we can truly have equality like we say we do in America.
Okay, so it is like an approach to things, or a categorization type of thing, rather than an actual just, this is our social system, this is how we handle our whatever, criminal justice or voting or whatever.
Yeah, it's like an analytic framework, I'd say, for understanding social stratification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I did listen to the Kimberly Crenshaw, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly Crenshaw. I listened to like 1.5 of her lectures, and it seemed more like that. It seemed more like categorizing rather than we need to do this as a social system straight up. Get rid of whatever we had and replace it with this. I didn't think she was going that way, the way Ben Shapiro's saying.
So there's a lack of solutions.
To where we replace our opinions with that. Huh?
Lack of solutions being presented?
For intersectionality?
Yeah.
I would say so.
Because this guy is like those guys I see online. They're like,
that's based on my opinion.
Keep showing these images of like the 50s where the dad comes home and his hair is like combed back with some sort of toxic grease, and he's like has the nuclear family. It's like, it's like that's not real, right? Like. Ooh.
Okay, so the big picture with this is discrimination against certain groups of people. You would say intersectionality is your solution for that?
I'd say having an intersectional approach is definitely important.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're saying it's a part of it. It's not the whole thing.
Can you rephrase?
It's how would I explain this? I don't know. Like, it's not the whole.
Well, it's just like I'm gonna give an example. Like say like he did. Say you are a brown woman who happens to also be gay, and you're also a feminist. Like, those are 3 different identities, and without the intersectional approach, you have to essentially fragment yourself. I was just listening to a podcast the other day about one of the pioneering women of intersectionality. She was going to college at a time when like women weren't encouraged to go to college, and so she found herself like often being the only woman, and like everyone else was a dude. She was the only woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she, as a woman of color, she could find support in the Black community for her going to for Black issues to work towards those goals.
Yeah.
But if she wanted to do something as a woman, she often found herself being laughed at, and
even within the Black community.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we shouldn't have to fragment ourselves like that, and that's what intersectionality is all about. And yeah, definitely not stepping on other marginalized groups of people to further your own goal.
So yeah, that would just make me say the overall solution would be getting rid of corruption in any area of life.
Yeah.
To where you're not even worried about categories of people, or you could say social archetypes, like Black, gay, feminist. You don't have to worry about that.
Oh yeah, and race is definitely a social construct. It doesn't have a basis in biology.
Jared Taylor would disagree with you.
He thinks race and identity are the same thing. So it's like,
I've heard guys talk about white spirit and Black spirit and Latino spirit. Yeah, we look all into those guys. So so for example, if there's a big picture type of thing overriding everything, like let's say, okay, killing is bad. That transcends all the groups to where it's just an individual human issue, right? Someone killing someone else. Stealing is bad. It's a blanket thing. That's what I think the solution is for all of this. Now the problem is people don't follow these things, and then you have conditioning to where they
They just follow because it's there.
They might find someone who's more of an easier target, right? Whether you have cops killing, black teenagers or something, right? It's an easier target than him shooting, I don't know, some white politician guy, right? He'll be done. He'll be going to jail for that shit. But the young black teenager, he might be able to get off or get away. So it comes down to corruption, to me. If there's no corruption, then we don't have to worry about any of this. And people can just be themselves. Solutions?
I mean,
or questions?
I agree. I agree with all that, for sure.
Yeah. I think most people will tell me, well, that's not the reality of it. Well, you got to make that the reality. That is the main solution. That is the only solution. Straight up.
Yeah.
Eliminating corruption. Period.
I was told the other day, it's like, James, that's not reality the way the world is. I mean, it's what you make of it. Fuck. Like,
yeah.
It's like, listen, James, I've been hurt, so now I'm going to dictate it on you. It's like, oh, man, I didn't know tyranny had, like, a partner,
Yeah, if you eliminate hate crime, but not crime itself, you're still fucked. Society society will still be fucked.
Yeah, because then you could be like, we the people, instead of just like...
I'll say in the comments, they're saying...
Like, just on that one... Like you said, like, killing is bad, or we have a problem with theft, like, as we the people, instead of just, like, everybody all over the place.
Right? You don't need to worry about women's rights if everyone has rights, if there's just a blanket term for it, right?
Make things so much simpler.
But granted, that's the way I think things were already supposed to be designed in a way, but there's corruption. Someone could just break the rule, then it won't matter.
So we presented with the argument before where it's like, that's just too simple. Guys, it's not that simple. No, actually, it is.
Yeah.
It is simple.
Well, they always try. I think they always try to cover it up. Like, back in the day, like when women couldn't vote or they couldn't work, they were just stay-at-home moms, and they all kind of just accepted it at some point.
I think that's conditioning.
Like kind of conditioned, and like back in the day where there's no technology or nothing, nobody could like say their own opinion. So like they control it to say we the people. That's probably why there wasn't as much corruption back then.
Well, I think
I don't know about that.
I don't know if technology has a big role to play. People are can be individuals themselves.
Yeah,
it's powerful.
This makes me wonder why does inequality even exist in the first place, and why does it persist?
Once again, it comes to what are the origins of corruption? That's one thing, but that's a little too philosophical and woo-woo right now.
Here's the video. The origins of evil. Yes. Are you ready for 3 hours?
But
3 hours.
But in simple terms, it comes down to corruption and ignorance, right? You have, let's say, the Deep South in the fucking 1700s or something. I don't know, 1800s.
I don't know.
You have ignorance of the other. Right? You have let's say a white man and a black man. You have the ignorance of the other person. It's like, he looks different than me. He's probably different than me. He probably acts different than me. You have an ignorance of the other person, of your shared qualities, right? You're just looking for differences and things like that. There's the ignorance part. Then corruption comes into play when those fears and because of the conflict of who this person is, once those fears come about and then I act on those fears, that's the corruption. So I think it's a mixture of ignorance and corruption.
So it sounds like you're saying tribalism is
part of it.
Largely responsible for some people being ignorant.
There's a whole social thing going on. There's, as Carl Jung might call it, like an animus and anima, which is like mommy and daddy figures.
Yeah.
A lot of people consider like the president like a father figure.
I can see that. Yeah.
Like whatever he says, I follow the rules, and that's my guy. Like,
or Obama.
Yeah.
Like he's like the classical example. That's my daddy. See? He's my daddy.
God, I miss Obama being president.
And it works with hating too.
Like what? What about it?
Why do I miss Obama being president?
Yeah, explain.
Because when I traveled abroad, I didn't have to lie and say I was Canadian.
What?
He creeps me out. Big time.
Obama?
Yeah.
What? Why?
He's a murderer.
What?
A murderer?
Yeah.
What?
Of who?
What?
Well,
Right?
do we have time for this? And
I could dedicate a special.
that's
portion
what I
at the
mean
end.
by not allowing any little slither of corruption anywhere. Obama, yeah, he was polite and talked nice and all that, but he also droned people all over the Middle East.
Mercilessly.
He actually ran out of bombs in Syria. He dropped so many bombs, he ran out of them.
Yeah.
Now think about that. We spend trillions on the military, and we ran out of bombs. How many freaking bombs did he drop? A lot.
It's
He's the
basically-
first
yeah.
president to kill an American citizen overseas. I think he killed 2 of them.
With the
But
bomb?
he did get Osama bin Laden. He
That whole-
did do that.
Did he? Did he really?
Happened under his watch. Happened under his watch.
Even if he did, would you want your noble, highest leader in the free world? Do you want him to be like, we found the bad guy and we killed him, or do you want to be like, well, we caught the bad guy and found out what the hell was going on? It's like, why is he like this?
Yeah, I mean,
One thing sounds like wisdom. One thing sounds like cheap cheers, cheap claps, things like that.
Yeah,
we got him. Yeah.
In the fucking, what was it, ESPN, they had a game going on. Just here. It's like, stop it. Stop.
yeah, I definitely don't think it's America's business to police the world.
Ooh, here he
Definitely
is.
not.
He's here?
That's Levi.
Oh.
We got
Whatever, I
some
call
comments,
him.
y'all.
Hunter's here?
I would yell his actual name, but I won't.
Levi says, "Fuck Obama, destabilize the Middle East."
Well,
I
Okay.
disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think he contributed to it, but Bush said it.
I was
off.
gonna say
I
he
mean-
continued what Bush did. Continued.
People have been fighting and killing each other in the Middle East for, I don't know, thousands of years. Obama didn't, invent that.
No, but he continued it.
Yeah, he continued.
That's why I'm
it.
like, all right, dude, leave, get out.
I think Bush Sr. started something when the first Gulf War, and then there's been a plan to follow that thing, and Obama went right in step with it.
Maybe.
I think.
I wouldn't say. I think he definitely had a hand in like making this whole thing as far as.
Well, Saddam Hussein,
You
us propping him up and putting him in there.
Well, he was originally. I think he was a CIA agent originally.
Yeah, he's the head of the CIA. Yeah, George Bush.
Saddam.
Yeah, but he's like a puppet leader we put in there. Like,
But then he went rogue.
we'll be back. Yeah, we got rich, had built a fortress, hundreds of thousands of soldiers protecting him. But whatever. Where were we at?
We can
Solutions.
Talk about that in the end. That can be like. I was gonna say in the town
Bonus
and other stuff.
Hey, there's a box of baseballs right there.
I did.
James trying to play catch?
So
Not in here.
I got more videos, guys.
Yes.
Wait, you said solutions for what?
Steak.
For intersectionality. Or not for but for the problems that Shapiro brings up and the problems that are the reason why intersectionality exists.
Well, I think we already established the causes of how people might, the roots of these problems, and already the solutions involving the elimination of corruption and ignorance, but that's like a gradual thing as well.
Well, this kind of reminds me of Simone de Beauvoir, her book, The Second Sex, where she talks about how we conceive of ourselves as human beings as the self versus an other. And I think that's pretty accurate, and I think people have been living their lives with that mental framework for, I don't know, maybe the entirety of our species' existence. So for us to overcome that, I mean, if it's part of being human to look at the world that way, then I guess that would explain why we have so much inequality and why it persists. But then it's the question of how can we overcome that?
Well, wisdom to replace ignorance and morality to replace corruption.
Well, I think people should try to understand that it's just an illusion of self versus other, because we all are human. We all share the same human experience, and we all basically want the same things in life, you know, to be happy and healthy and live a good life, you know?
I just think there's more corrupt people that have different ideas. They kind of don't want to be happy. They just want to fight you. Like, you know, they just want to get in a fight. They want to fight they want to argue just to argue. That kind of makes them happy.
I would argue that's not really what they want.
Sure.
It depends. There's psychological things. There's like psychopathy that exists where people are just cold to another person. Like, I need my bottom line. I need to make this $10 million. I don't care who dies while I do it.
I would say the majority do agree with what you're saying, but like I think there's still a small percentage, or they just something in their head. They always just want to kind of get in a fight. And I don't know if that actually makes them happy inside or not. But,
no, it wouldn't be happiness.
But
well, if you look at the core of the thing, this is why existential work is so important.
Yeah.
Because the core of it will relate to the other person, in which they can see themselves in another person. Right? A protester yelling Black Lives Matter, and I don't know, some dude in the South saying fuck black people. Right? They're both angry. But if they did the existential work and saw what anger was, like, oh shit, we both have anger. We can talk and relate on that level. Okay. And the other things become, do the psychological work, the other things just go.
I think it's a lack of existential ideas being presented. And that's why this guy's conceived as a...
But that's also a problem too, right?
He's an intelligent speaker. I'm like, no, he isn't.
But that's a problem too, right? I can't tell you. I can't tell you how to be happy.
Right? You should like.
I can't tell you what.
Christian Murray.
Yeah.
Christian Murray. I can't tell you how.
Looks like
can't tell you what your anger is.
Yeah.
So it's like they have to do the individual work on their own. But it would help if we had some guy with a platform saying, "Hey guys, investigate yourselves."
Well, this guy's a candy rapper. Go. He's a candy rapper. What I mean by that is he's not. I don't think he's that intelligent. It depends how you define intelligence. If intelligence means that I can memorize a bunch of words and refute them back to you, dude. Oh, you're really good at
to read, not to do fun stuff.
Oh my god! I think I still have one of those, just tucked away somewhere. I don't think I had one as a kid.
No, I saw it on TV. My dad's like, "Fuck." No. So I'm getting something else.
All right. So anything else to add to this?
I think we covered it. Almost everything.
He's a pseudo-intellectual. That's right.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Oh. This guy wants daddy to love him.
What? Oh yeah, this guy.
38, 40.
His lack of he's disingenuous.
Okay, so moving on to our next social justice warrior topic. Bodily autonomy. I have no idea who this guy is. I'm going to call him Bill Nye. He reminds me of Bill Nye the Science Guy, as far as like mannerisms and
look at me. Ormians, Bill Nye.
He's a clout chaser.
What'd you say? He's like auditioning for Sports Center.
I say he's trying out for ESPN, basically. So guys, that can be secretly sexist, but on the law, you'll never know. Tell you, it's football. It's like, come on.
Okay, so if I'm correct, bodily autonomy is about someone having rights with their own body. Is that the base sum of it? Obviously, it gets more complicated, but is that like the main idea?
Yeah, that's the basic idea that you should have the ability to make choices for your own body and no one else to be able to make those choices for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like if I want to have an abortion, like if I was the female having the kid in my stomach, like I would have the choice whether or not everybody else's opinion, but my own choice whether I want to have the kid or abort it or whatever. Is that?
Yeah.
That's what the bodily autonomy.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Well, what else?
He's going to throw some stuff out there.
Yeah.
I just wanted a base little definition.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is Bill Nye with the bodily autonomy argument is no excuse for killing your child.
Wait, watch how that camera pans in and out. I'm like, you're an ass. He's like Ben, except it's a little worse. Just saying, man.
Here's an argument that actually sounds good if you're a pro-choicer. Supposedly the greatest argument that permits women to kill their own babies is the bodily autonomy argument. This is the argument that says, it's my body, hands off, Jack. And the argument, the scenario that they use to bolster it is a hypothetical of a woman lying in a hospital bed. She awakens to discover she's plugged into some stranger because she's the only one that can keep that fellow alive. Nobody would force her to remain plugged into that fellow for 9 months because it's her body, and you can't make me do that. Matt Walsh basically dismantles. That's the word I've been looking for. Dismantles. See, dismembering is what they do in an abortion clinic. Dismantling is what we should be doing with the abortion argument. Let me share with you now the final 8 of these have been like just the crusher, just bolo punch after bolo punch. Here's Matt's response. Number 9, the bodily autonomy argument is flawed because it necessarily justifies lewd public behavior. We want to be really careful with how we explain.
It doesn't though. That's not part of it at all. Like, why would he even think that?
I wouldn't be surprised if this is a heavily religious guy. I'm just throwing that out there. It just smells like it.
Listen, if I give you absolute freedom, you could just be on coke and heroin and run out through the streets naked. We have to have rules. It's like, dude, you're a silly person.
He looks like a funny guy.
In this, so let's be really careful with how we explain this. This is what Matt sort of wrote. I did some tweaking. If I can do what I want to do with my body.
Yeah, what does that even mean? This is what he sort of wrote. I did some tweaking. Like, what?
Is it a quote or not a quote?
I already think you're extremely disingenuous regarding like the subject, and now I'm like, trust me, take my word for it. I did some tweaking. Like, what am I supposed to think when someone's making an argument based off of statistics when it's actually okay? So I did some tweaking. Okay, look.
To be fair, you didn't put quotes there.
I don't care. So when you're speaking for someone else, all you can have is the quote, really.
Yeah, you can't take someone else's quote.
Sort of like Stefan Molyneux stealing Charles Murray's.
Yeah. And he forgot to put that one thing at the bottom.
Yeah.
What was it specifically? It was what? It was.
Not yet.
You always have to judge an individual as an individual.
Wait.
Again?
You always have to judge an individual as an individual.
Yeah, they
can't
forgot
do
to
this
include that.
group thing. Yeah.
They forgot to include that, including Jared Taylor. That's why I'm like, fuck him.
All right, continue.
Then it becomes very difficult to launch a salient moral or legal attack against a man who chooses to sit in a playground in front of children wearing a raincoat. I think we all understand what's going on there. And you approach that fellow who's being lewd and sinful and grotesque and say, "Sir, put your clothes on and stop doing that. Hey, it's my body. You can't make me do whatever I want to do, especially if you're a pro-abortion woman with really bad arguments. You can't make me do what I want to do with my body." But alas, that brings us to a response number 10 from Matt Walsh. The dreaded bodily autonomy argument is flawed because our bodies are not autonomous at all. Kind of. Even a little bit. At all. Not really. Here's what Matt had to say about the bodily autonomy argument. Whether we are expected to pay taxes or drive the speed limit or provide a safe and sanitary home for our children, we are using our bodies to meet these expectations and laws. We experience and participate in life with our bodies. That's how it works. Absolute bodily autonomy is inexorably linked with personal autonomy. If my body is autonomous, my person must be autonomous, and if my person is autonomous, then my very existence is autonomous, and if my very existence is autonomous, then it is simply unacceptable, and by your logic, immoral for anyone to expect me to do anything for anyone at any point for any reason. Everybody together.
That's called playing with words to
Confused.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
confuse
confused.
people.
Thank you. Yes, that confused me.
I don't know.
He's basically advocating for people to be robots.
He has no
like-
idea what he's talking about.
Well, even if he was, there's still like a spirit to the rule. It's like, am I wrong about that?
What they're doing is they're conflating with the idea of choice. But if he has complete choice and freedom, then he could run around with a chainsaw with his dick out. We can't let him. Like, you know, you're being kind of silly. So everyone understands the difference between like good and evil, and that fucking, you know what I mean?
This reminds me of someone that already knows what he wants to like tell the public, but he doesn't know or he didn't do the research, and he's just like, "Oh, these two quotes are perfect. I'm just gonna state them, read them word for word, or tweak them a little bit, and then I'm gonna put a video on here, and everybody's gonna agree with me."
That makes me cry.
Cherry picking.
Yeah.
Alright, let's watch the rest of this
Right.
piece of
Remember the Crusher? Back in the 70s, the wrestler on the AWA, back with Vern Gagne, Baron von Raschke, and I can't believe that I know all of
thinks
these
he's winning
names.
though. That's the weird thing about
Just
it.
ding with that argument.
Ah, there you go. And look, there's Hitler. Beautiful. Right on time.
So much to unpack there.
Oh man.
Okay, so clearly, I think we all disagree with him. You might have a replacement
Definition.
sort of definition
Yeah,
for
go
our
ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
critique of
y'all,
what he was saying.
let's see what the actual definition is. So the idea of bodily autonomy is connected to the idea of bodily integrity. Bodily integrity emphasizes the importance of personal autonomy and the self-determination of human beings over their own bodies. So what he doesn't seem to be understanding is that bodily autonomy is basically just saying I have the right to make decisions for my body, and no one else has the right to force me to do anything I don't want to do with my own body. And he's also not understanding that one individual's rights end where another person's begin.
Yeah.
So going to his example of I guess he was saying the guy who was nude except for a raincoat around children, going to that, I mean, I would say that guy, he's infringing on the children's right to play in a public space safely and undisturbed, you know? So it just doesn't make any sense what he is saying.
He's cookie cutting. That's what he's doing.
Oh, what he's doing is he's eliminating all the other laws of society in order to just look at autonomy, right?
I'm gonna distort
The
reality.
old guy in the raincoat sitting in front of kids. Like, well, if we get rid of other laws, then it would make sense with this argument that he's trying to say. But
Yeah.
we do have other laws in place that consider, public nudity or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, he seems to think bodily
This guy's
autonomy
face is funny.
like it's a license to break all laws. It seems like that's the gist of what he thinks bodily autonomy is, which
Yeah.
is patently absurd and not what it is now.
I think he's just chapped about abortion. And that's why he's so upset and willing to make this silly fucking argument.
I think
Yeah,
it's
so that's
somebody
why.
close to him.
Hmm?
Maybe a friend or like a family member probably against it, and then he's like, no, and then he's like all confident, like I found this info. I'm gonna make this video. And I'm gonna show that family member or friend. You know what I'm saying?
If he's conditioning, he's corrupt, then yeah.
I just think he had like a religious group of researchers that
Probably.
put words together for him, and okay, you're gonna walk out this way, then turn to camera 2, then turn to camera 3, point at this, do
Yeah,
this.
but how did
fucking
he know
thing.
those cues? That like, oh, the cameras are there.
This was rehearsed several times.
So are we gonna get into abortion rights, or are we not gonna do that?
Oh, we could do that.
Oh.
I have a
Like right now, or
fairly simple answer to it, but
Oh, okay.
if you want to go like, maybe you can go topic by topic. Because I know you brought up circumcision,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
things like that, abortion. So Do you want to do that?
I will follow your lead.
Yeah, she's not very authoritative.
I argued that last night.
Huh?
Abortion.
Yeah. All right, so let's go with the idea on its own. Not this guy's definition, but our own ideas of bodily autonomy. What do you think the importance of that is?
The
James?
importance of it?
Yeah. Or what do you think it means, and why is it important or not important?
Well, the choice to do what you want with your body.
Yeah, it's a definition.
That involves freedom. And if you understand what freedom is, then you understand the difference between good and evil. When we establish that, then we can also establish the idea of how if you infringe anybody's, as long as it's morally acceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, since we already have the idea of what good is, like goodness, you understand how it's a form of tyranny to really basically say, no, you can't do that. No.
Yeah.
Like, get off the coffee table now. You can't pierce your ear. What's wrong with you? It's like, and more, Like, there needs to be choice here.
Yeah. For me, it has to, no matter what discipline you're coming from. If you're coming from a social look at things, well, you need the individual right there. You need individual rights. If you're coming from a religious or spirituality way, they have to have choice. Otherwise, it's not a moral decision. How is it moral if someone else is choosing it for you? If the government says you can't do this or you go to jail.
Yeah, so it's like, when I said about Ben Shapiro, it's like a lot of the rhetoric he might be spouting out might be conditioned basically as far as like Ben, you won't do this, and eventually when you grow up you're going to be talking about, have talking points that will be revolving around like these ideals, like these religious views, if not, laws or whatever have you, like the Ten Commandments or whatever, like basic ideas that are rarely ever, like I'd say, like further explained.
Yeah, there's a difference between reading them and then spouting them out.
Sure. So it's like
reading them, memorizing them, spouting them out, as opposed to this is who I am.
Yeah. So
there's a difference.
If I ask Ben, it's like, hey Ben, why don't you go out and stab or shank anybody you please? It's like, well, it's wrong. I'm like, well, why do you think that? And maybe if you get like just chip away, it might go back to when he was taught when he was younger. As far as instead of like actually internally investigating, which is existential work, like shadow work and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, versus, Daddy told me it was wrong. By daddy, I mean it could be in the daddy figure type of thing.
Yeah. Something simple like, I was chopping vegetables. I cut my thumb. Yeah. It hurt. Like, what would happen if I did this to someone else? It would probably hurt too.
So that's like what? That's the veil of ignorance type of thing. Or it's like
empathy.
Oh, my bad. My bad. I mean, I'm not ruling out empathy. I mean, like, it hurts. So if I get to someone else, they might do it to me. Like, that's creepy.
That's a little different.
That's creepy, man.
All right, Dan. What do you think?
I think it's very important that they know their bodily anatomy, like their rights, because like if they live, it really depends on their environment. If they're in a bad environment, or they're so conditioned by their family or their culture or their religion, and they don't have enough confidence or know, their own rights, then they'll probably just subject themselves to what their family members or friends are probably going to do, and then they grow up and they get a little upset or they get a different point of view, and it's like, hey, you already had a kid, or you already did what you did with your body, or like you did your favors for your family members or whatever, and you're you feel kind of like obligated instead of like knowing your own rights, instead of sticking up for yourself. And
okay, but that's sort of like an outside result of things in a way. Mm-hmm. What do you think about someone having control over like how they govern themselves, like physically on a bodily level, body function level?
Well, like what do I intake, or what do I have in?
Let's say I want to. How about like drugs, right? Should someone have the choice to do whatever drug they want because they're only doing it to themselves?
You mean instead of having like guidelines from like a doctor or whatever?
Or like the law, like you can't do this drug. You go to jail if you do this drug, even though you're only harming yourself or helping yourself or whatever you want to call it.
I mean,
it's interesting you say that, because like, yeah, we all have the same access to like libraries or dictionaries or like scientists that have those opinions on like, if if you abuse this is going to happen, but you still see people do it anyway.
All right, let's go even. How about suicide? Should someone be allowed to do that to themselves? Or should the government come in and say, you can't do that?
Damn.
We will stop you.
Well, I don't believe in...
Like, listen, I'm tired of life. I'm gone. That's it. I'm done.
I don't believe in suicide, but, like...
I want to jump in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I want to expand on that. Something I've been wondering about. Does someone have the right to consent to their own murder? And is it a crime if someone murders them at their, at their request? I'm actually thinking of something that actually happened in real life. Okay. There was this, I don't remember their names right now, but there is this guy whose ultimate, sexual fantasy was for someone to chop off his limbs, eat them, and ultimately murder him.
What the fuck?
Right? That's insane. To me, that's insane.
Did he pay the person?
No. So, he...
I don't know if you paid me millions of dollars if I'd do that. That's so fucking weird.
I don't know why he wanted that, but he wanted it. And he did find a guy who wanted to do that on the internet, of course.
Oh my god.
So...
What the fuck?
So he goes to the guy's house, and the guy chops off his limbs, he eats them, whatever. And ultimately, he kills the guy after, a night or whatever. And the guy who killed him, later on when he was apprehended when the police apprehended him, his argument was, well, he consented to this. This was his choice. This is what he wanted. I didn't break any law because I didn't kill someone who didn't want to be killed. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have the right to consent to your own murder?
That is weird. Where did you find that?
I don't remember. Internet?
That's so extreme.
Well,
oh my god.
To start off, it wouldn't be murder, correct? Because murder means someone's killing you without your consent. So murder's thrown out the door. Yeah. I mean, did the guy record a tape or something I'm doing this on purpose?
Yeah. There's video recording. Yeah, because
he thought about, he planned all of it.
Well, I mean, obviously he's so weird. The police will probably investigate me later. I need to have evidence showing this guy consented to it. So, all right, let's rephrase. Can you consent to your own death? And then there's the issue of capital punishment. Why does the country you live in have the right to take your life or not, but you don't? How does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's an obvious contradiction. I don't agree with the death penalty at all. But in this gruesome scenario, as you pointed out, I would have questions for the guy himself. Are you in your right mind?
That's a very good thing to wonder about. Yeah.
Do you really want this, or what happened, man?
Are you sure you didn't take drugs tonight? Are you alright?
Well, apparently he was sober the whole time. Apparently.
Sums up.
Yeah.
He likes that thing. Oh, I can't feel my limbs. Yeah, eat them.
I would argue that, yeah, you do have the right to consent to your own death because it's all about consent. And if he doesn't have any issues with mental health, he's of a sound mind, and for whatever reason that he wants that, it's his body, it's his life, why shouldn't that be his choice? If he can find a consenting person who to do that with him.
But what if that same guy kind of, you find out years later has, already messed up other people's lives and, try to get other people killed and stuff,
Well, this guy recorded a video, so that throws that out the door.
But I wonder, hey, why do you want to help me out with this? Well.
But I think I agree with you. It's just, I guess I would think about it a little in a different way. I'd almost want it to be okay, both of them, they go to a cop station. They this is what we're gonna do. He's gonna legally kill him. He's just gonna be in this weird group. They're the cop's okay, son. He calls down the psychologist. Okay, you're gonna sit and talk with this guy for whatever. A legit psychologist, not a,
what would probably happen? He's like,
armchair guy.
He's like, yeah. The next thing you see is both of them in cells. Like,
I want someone to sit both of them down and just mentally break them down for hours, just picking their lives apart.
oh, sure.
And then they can.
So it's essentially like if someone wants to get married, they have to get a license for it, that kind of a thing.
That's a weird thing too. Yeah.
And this, brings the question up: why must death be non-consensual? Why can't you consent to your own death?
Yeah.
What?
I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with that. That was just a so far out there example. In my mind, I'm thinking like, a 90-year-old who's like suffering and shit. And they're like, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
Just overdose me on heroin or something. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a sexual fantasy where a guy gets his limbs cut.
Hey, different strokes for different folks.
Now,
That's
Eat it in front of me. Season it.
Jordan. That should
yeah,
be
it's your last sexual fantasy. So
Jordan. That should be your title for this video. You get so many views.
Just call it, the story of the guy who came and went. Just.
But I'm assuming the guy wanted to die too. So
Yeah.
then it's not just a sexual fantasy. Now it's like, okay, why do you want to die? And that's where the psychology comes in.
Ultimate turn on for him, obviously.
Well, I mean, like,
Skydive or something. I don't know.
do you really want this? Do you really want this? If so, you can tell me how. Oh, that's their beef between them.
Ah.
Are they fighting with each other?
This happens sometimes.
Oh no.
What's happening?
All over Obama.
Oh, there's hung up on that. We're talking about some dude getting his fucking arms and legs chopped off and eaten.
They're
He's
still
talking about Obama. Oh.
Ray's dad might appear soon.
What?
This guy named Ray's dad. He appears every now and then.
Oh.
He's a manimal. That's a word.
Man.
All right. Since we already sort of jumped into like specifics here, I guess let's move to abortion.
Oh boy.
Who wants to go
Who's
first?
gonna start us off? I think you should start us off.
Me?
Abortion.
Well, no, I guess I can start us off.
I'll go. 'Cause mine is simple. It's gonna sound just like the last answer. For all types of discipline on a social level, as far as individual rights, right? You want choice. Choice is a heavy thing, especially in American society. Like that seems to be one of the most important rights. Period.
Yeah.
It's all about choice.
The idea of it.
Choice and freedom, towards like slogans and shit. Now, for the religious types, how can these people make moral decisions if you're making choices for them? You're eliminating the moral scenario. Now, me personally, with certain scenarios, I wouldn't agree with abortion, right? If it's just two people who, one night stand, they're just chasing pleasure, and then happens to get pregnant, it's like, I can see why I can morally pick you apart for getting an abortion. But how can they make a moral decision if I step in, run into the building with guns, say, freeze! No abortions here. Like, the morality's gone. I'm stealing their moral choice and essentially their freedom. So, I am pro-choice in a way.
So why do you think the issue of abortion is an issue of morality? I mean, why wouldn't you just look at it as a component of women's health? I mean, it's pretty much what it is. It's women's health.
Well, I don't agree on stepping on ants, so I'm not going to agree with going into a body and killing a potential life either. And that's not religious. I'm not a religious person.
Well, then how do you define when a life starts? I mean, religious people define it as the
That's a
moment
philosophical
of
question,
conception. Man. I mean, Carl Sagan wrote an awesome essay about exactly this, and ultimately, I mean, you can't point to any one moment and be like, oh, that's when life started. He makes a great point that life is an unbroken chain stretching back, billions of years. Life doesn't just magically start the moment a sperm happens to get inside of an egg. So
Agreed, but we can physically see that this, like, we understand what a person is. We can see that this is the potential for a person. Thus, why not protect that?
Well, the thing is, if you want to give potential people the same rights as actual people, like us, it's like, well, where does that go? Like, every miscarriage would be manslaughter. Every time a man masturbates by himself, he could be prosecuted because he's killing millions of potential lives. You know, it's like, where do you end up if you go that route?
That's different, though. See, first of all, the sperm would need an egg, right, in order to incubate, if you will, into a child. What was the first thing you said?
I said so many things.
You said the sperm thing, and then you said something.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, like, if we want to give potential human beings, like a fetus or an embryo or a zygote, the same rights as actual human beings, like you and me, that's so problematic, because then women would be essentially committing a crime every time they have a miscarriage of manslaughter. Like, someone could be like, oh, you shouldn't have done X, Y, Z, and that's why you had a miscarriage. So, you know, you were reckless, so we're going to charge you with a crime. And the thing is, the vast majority of pregnancies, they end in miscarriages. And oftentimes women don't even realize that they are pregnant. I mean, sometimes women even have miscarriages and they don't even realize that they had one. And it's like, to define all of that as a crime is so problematic.
Well, here's the thing. Me personally, I'm not calling it a crime. I'm not calling it to be using the law at all. I'm talking about morality here. And when I talk about morality, intentions come into play, right? If someone has a miscarriage by accident, well, their intentions wasn't to have a miscarriage, correct? But if they're in an abortion clinic, their intention is to get rid of this thing that's potentially a baby.
Well, my question is, why is it an issue of morality? Why would it be immoral to have an abortion?
Oh, if you ask me personally, like I said, I don't agree with even stepping on ants.
Well, I don't think it is.
I can see the potential for a human life, or like stepping on an ant. I'm going to consider both lives valuable. Potential life, I'm viewing that as valuable. And I mean, and when I mean potential, like, obviously there's the philosophical thing, you know, when were you born? Were you born on March 24th, or were you born when your mom met your dad and he had that twinkle in his eye? It's like, oh, she's the one. Or whatever.
Yeah, like some Asian cultures, they count you as already a year old by the time you're born, right? Is that right?
I don't know. No idea.
I think I've heard about that.
I haven't. You have to research that.
It's a philosophical death, too.
I mean, in the big picture of things, I think it's... it might get woo-woo, but I think things are supposed to happen in a certain way anyways, and people are going to make their choices. But for me personally, a person with intention, a person with a moral idea of things, if the scenario is in front of me, I'm going to make the moral choice, which is preserve the life.
Sometimes pregnancies can jeopardize the woman's life, and so
there's where intentions come in.
So
it fits right in with what I'm saying.
So this guy...
It's like, are you going to... Like, if a mom's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for this child to live.
Well, that's her choice.
There you go. Or the other way around, like, I'm not ready to die. I'm so sorry. But they're going to feel that, right? They're going to feel like, fuck, this sucks. If they aborted the baby to save their lives, they're still going to feel like this sucks. And neither one, I wouldn't consider either scenario immoral at all. It would call it a choice, but there's no wealth of internal intoxication unless the choice is made, unless you actually look at the scenario in depth and consider all the intentions involved. If a mom considers all her intentions, like, fuck, to live or to die and save my kid, you need to heavily consider those things. Yeah. Which I think is important for human development on any level.
Well, I feel like a lot of
Sorry.
right-wing Republicans, like this fellow, they don't understand that there's a process of development that turns a single sperm and a single egg into a baby, and they consider like a 5-6 week old fetus embryo, they consider that the same as a baby, and they don't seem to understand the difference. I mean,
well, these guys are talking heads. They don't really have much of an audience, but somehow these guys keep getting large platforms to say nonsense.
Well, again,
that's just, I don't think that has anything to do with even the abortion issue. Yeah. I think it's just certain arguments they'll prop up in a certain way just to keep the argument on that level. Instead of looking at gray areas, it turns into this or this. That's it. Left or right.
Which is why I call them inauthentic, because is that really your argument, or did someone tell you that? So I don't know how you really feel.
Yeah.
You know, I can't.
Also, I want to add in that in my scenario, I'd be covering all areas of life when it comes to the morality of it. So a mom wouldn't have to worry about, like, fuck, if I have this kid, I won't be able to go to college, or I won't have money for this, or I'll be stuck on welfare or whatever. They won't have to worry about it in my scenario because I look at morality on each freaking issue throughout the entire world.
They have a chance to die when they're giving birth to.
Yeah.
That's what I brought up, yeah. That's just the mom's choice. In fact, I'd say hopefully it's a couple together and it's their choice.
You know,
I would hope that.
Are you familiar with Freakonomics?
No.
That sounds very familiar.
Well,
sounds dirty. Not gonna lie. Freakonomics?
Well, there's some evidence that
a rap song.
That abortion actually benefits society as a whole. Like the crime rate was steadily increasing up until, I don't know, the early 1990s, and then it inexplicably just fucking dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped, and everyone was trying to figure out, well, what's causing this? Why is the crime dropping? And some people, they put out the theory that abortion becoming legal in America is responsible for the drop in crime because it eliminated all of those people who would have been born into circumstances where they were very likely to become criminals. So all those people who would have been born and would have committed those crimes were just, they never existed because abortion was legalized. So,
I hear that scenario and I understand, but I'm going to call it bullshit.
Yeah.
Why?
You can't just
not bullshit as it's incorrect, but bullshit as in you can't use that as a reason for wanting more abortions or whatever. I can't see that as a, right decision or right scenario for that. I don't know.
Well,
because there's geniuses that come out of bad environments too, you know.
There's also choice involved as
well. There's also other factors. There's other crimes going on that's causing their crimes.
What environments?
Well, sure.
No, geniuses are very rare. Is the thing.
Well, there's a what do you call it? Being a product of
if it really does have that effect.
I mean, certain things like that, statistics like that, they don't mean shit to me.
Why?
I could flip a penny and it lands on heads every day. And every time it lands on heads, someone gives me $2. Theoretically, that could happen. It doesn't mean shit to me.
That's what I meant as far as
there's not an exact correlation. Plus, there's way more factors going on. Way more.
As far as statistics that might cross over into existential idea, that's why I kind of separate the two.
I mean, you'd be saying that, well, in all these abortion, and 90% of these abortion scenarios, it's because the dad's running away. It's like, shit, you're pregnant? I'm getting out of here. then your solution could be fatherhood. Like, oh, there's not enough fathers around. That's the reason why this crime thing is happening, or not, or whatever.
Well, some abortions also happen because, like, women are in an abusive relationship, and they know if they have this child that's biologically connected to the abuser, they will probably never be able to get away from the abuser. So that can influence.
That's another scenario I usually bring up, which would
I actually know someone
the
like
rape or
she
abuse.
Because she has that kid with that person, she still gets like beat up from the guy too. And she won't admit, she won't call the cops, she won't admit it. She just keeps on.
Once again, the rape or abuse situation is still, obviously all these scenarios comes down to the mom's choice, but she has things to consider, right? She can be like, you know, I'm going to raise this kid, and he's going to be a champion. He's going to save the frickin' world. I can turn this shitty scenario into something else with your intentions and all that.
Why is the kid a boy, though?
Him or her.
Yeah, throw that in there. Well, we are talking about feminism next, right?
I'm talking about champions.
What's your
Champions have nothing to do with gender.
Oh yeah, you said champion. Is it because the N? You assume that was a guy? Because champion?
No, because he said he.
Cordelia.
Oh, he did say he. Oh. Okay, I didn't hear him say he.
Look at Cordelia.
For me, I just speak. I don't think I'm saying him or her. I think it's just, for me, it's just assumed in my own mind to where I'm not even thinking about what other people are listening to.
Oh, maybe this would be a good time to bring up, or you get mad at me if I say girl or something, or her, girl.
Referring to women as females.
Yeah, that. What do you think about that, Jordan?
What? Say again?
Go ahead.
Well, often if he's talking about a female person, he'll just reduce her to her sex and just be like, this female or that female or those females. And it's like, well, you don't talk about men that way. You wouldn't say this male, that male, these males. That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
First off, it's not often.
Well,
second off, there's no bad intention there.
well, we argue against guys that say men do this and women do that, and we're like, well, okay, there's female teachers, but there's also female UFC fighters. Right? There's Andy Dick and there's Yoel Romero.
I was gonna say Chris Cyborg, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Nunes.
And most of the time, when we watch these guys, like we point out female fighters' names that would beat the shit out of them. Like, oh, she'd beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
She'd beat the shit out of you.
What's the guy's name? The MGTOW dude.
That we had on.
Yeah.
Corey.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, dude, Andy Dick would die against Amanda Nunes. He would die.
What we got? Anything good?
The wage gap doesn't exist. Changed my mind. Says Finley Benson.
Let's not.
What's the wage?
Well, look at this. Somebody's been watching Steven Crowder. Steven Crowder's another one who's a candy rapper.
That there's a wage gap between men and women. That women are paid less money for doing the exact same work as men. And
They
they're
want
paid
us.
less.
They want us to talk about it, or
not,
His
but-
stance is that doesn't happen, it doesn't exist, and change his mind. Sorry, bro. This ain't Reddit, so.
Oh.
Oh no!
Shots fired.
It's all good, James.
Arrows fired.
That's one of those things.
Cool. That just seems easy. That's just an easy answer to me. You should be paid for whatever work you do. That's your.
Yeah. But you shouldn't
Oh,
get
you're a
paid less
doctor?
if
You
you're
get paid.
female or nothing.
It's like,
Well, you get recognized as a doctor.
Yeah,
That's
if you're
when-
a female
That's when these.
girl doctor, if you're a girl doctor, there you go. Or a guy doctor.
That's when those characteristics just go away, right? Because people consider themselves other things, right? There's transgender and all the other names that I don't know. So you say, oh, it's a doctor.
Yeah.
In fact, it'd be better like, oh, that's Dan.
Or how
Right,
about
that- that might work
how
even
about
better.
postman instead of just like
Post person.
post. That doesn't even make sense. Post person. The postman, post person.
The Sphinx is back.
What? Sphinx?
Mr. Spinks. He's another regular guy.
Who's it? What's his
He's
pet
not
name?
that regular.
What?
He's regular now.
Well,
He's
lovely
sorta
things
regular.
are being
He's
said.
here.
What's his pet
You
name?
got the thing there. You can read it.
Anything good?
Is there a gendered insult in there?
The only gender thing is usually if we're called no, I'm not gonna say it. Women deserve to be paid less because they should be in the kitchen.
Oh, Finley!
What?
How dare you?
Oh my god.
Now you're just looking for attention.
Finley.
Send this troll back under his bridge.
Oh. Anything else?
Yeah, you're looking for attention on that one. Alright, let's go to the
troublemakers. Eventually we'll have a troll channel where they all can just thrive.
Absolute freedom.
They can call us gay and all that other stuff.
Do you eat cheese pizza?
If it's vegan cheese, yeah.
What's vegan cheese?
It's often made out of cashews.
Cashews?
Yep.
What?
Yep.
I tried to do that.
Or like coconut can be the base of it.
Oh, well. Huh.
Who's asking?
You know who.
120.
Oh.
121.
Yeah, I'd say 120.
That one restaurant has vegan cheese pizza.
No, he's saying I think they already have a pizza or a frozen pizza or something. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out after.
Alright, moving on to the last, but not least. Are we doing anything after this?
Obama.
Oh, wait, we didn't get into circumcision.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and issues of consent. I guess we could have talked about that.
It's like, baby, do you want cocktail? Yes or no? It's like, God. I'm so happy I don't remember that.
Let's go over it. What do you think?
The topic of circumcision. Okay. Well, this relates back to what we were talking about earlier: bodily autonomy, bodily integrity, forced genital cutting, which is what infant circumcision is. It's a gross human rights violation. It completely violates the baby's autonomy and integrity. It's a gross human rights violation. And
there's no real scientific reason for it either, right? It's strictly religious almost.
I mean, it's
probably
cultural.
There's probably special circumstances.
It's a Bronze Age cultural ritual that's been with
religious.
humanity for
just
thousands of years. Yeah.
Just call it religious.
And
I'm
only
sure it is.
yeah, it's pretty religious, yeah. And it's only within the past, I don't know, 50, 60 years or so that Western medicine has tried to find scientific medical reasons to do that to babies. But they really, if you examine all those studies and the evidence, you'll see there is no evidence supporting that as beneficial to the baby at all.
Yeah. That's what I read. And that there was no real scientific reason for it. It's mostly just cultural or like religious. And
now it's like
you are completely infringing on this kid's right.
It's like,
I mean, I think the article you sent, like, babies are, you can see the pain on their face when these doctors do this.
Yeah.
It's like
and cut. Then it's like, well, I don't want my son to be a freak. Cut it.
What's the Joe Rogan talks about?
Like,
I don't know if it's Orthodox Jewish to where they actually eat them.
Oh, yeah, gross.
Right?
There's some other shit, like, I don't know if it's ovaries or whatever the fuck.
Ovaries?
I don't know, I heard that from somewhere. Yeah. It's just weird, man.
Yeah, it's just a lot of people, they think it should be the parent's choice to decide that for their child.
Nah.
No.
If they really, let's say, okay, there's no real scientific reason, but let's say this person's religious. Well, when they get older, they can make some sort of super sacrifice to their God.
Exactly.
Like, I'll handle this pain, God. No anesthetic, just do it.
The thing I love the best. This. I'll give you it.
But yeah, that's something that they can have done later in life, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, if they choose to, of their own free will, and not have something forced on them.
It's like, everybody like, I have to cut off your left arm because it's tradition.
Now, the place where this argument will get complicated is the same with the transgender argument, right? When you have little kids asking for that. Like, Dad, I want to be circumcised now. Or, Dad, I think I'm a woman, or I am a woman, or whatever.
Well,
then it's like, how old do you have to be? How quote unquote mature? How can we even tell whether you're mature or not? So that's a whole like another level to that.
Well, to be able to give consent, you have to be able to understand all of the issues. So like a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, there's probably no way he can have an adult understanding of the supposed pros and all the cons of circumcision.
Yeah. Fair enough. Just thought I'd ask that. What?
This guy.
Oh, shit.
What do you say?
He said, I bet Chris Cyborg has a penis.
She's a female fighter who's like brolic and knocks people out. Alright. So, you guys, Dan, James, on the circumcision?
Oh, no.
We all agree.
No.
It's
I'm not asking you if you want to get a circumcision. I'm asking you.
It's too late, man.
Same here.
I just wonder, it's like my dad's like, well, I don't want him to look like a weirdo. Do it.
Yeah, but like, did he also get plastic surgery on your face? You look exactly like him.
Oh.
No.
I look exactly like him.
But if you didn't, is that something he would do? The whole he has to look like me thing.
I hope not.
I think it's like when I say
It's
religious.
silly, but I wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, when I say religious, I think it's just more cultural, but it's like sort of under the guise of religion. They're like, oh, my dad did this with me, and his dad did it with him, and it's just. But it was really started out as a religious tradition that they just kept passing on. Yeah.
Yeah, the history of circumcision is really interesting. Yeah.
To
the practice actually. I mean.
It's like, what sick fuck thought of that?
Right.
It sounds like
right,
something.
right.
It sounds like something like Nazis would come up with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
What
you
happened
can't
if
be
we did
blonde.
this?
Like you can't be blonde.
It's like,
You
listen.
gotta exterminate all blonde.
Let's cut off one of the twins' nuts. Let's see what affects the other.
One of the most interesting questions is, how did a Jewish religious ritual become part of American culture? That's an interesting question.
This matchup was done
As
by
Jordan Peterson might even say that we're basically based on Judeo-Christian values. So.
Yeah, but we're not supposed to be, though. Says the Constitution.
Does anybody want a water?
Yeah, I'd love one.
I'm good. Yeah, okay. Well, okay.
The force, yeah. Just gotta make Jordan all green there, have the water float over.
So cold down here, you guys.
You want a coat?
Woo!
Cold.
I'm fine.
I'm freezing. I need my scarf.
I'm sweating.
You're cold as ice?
Yeah, I changed the timestamp. Yeah, so Dan, James, any comments on it?
Yeah, no. If I'm like 13, I'm like, well, I don't want to put an age thing, but if I give someone, if I can convince someone, like, good enough, man, good enough.
She, I don't know, like she told me a study that like there's several people kids that were infants and they ended up getting killed or badly damaged because of the whatever.
Yeah.
Infections, probably.
Yeah, an
Or they
infection.
bleed to death.
Or they bleed to death.
Yeah.
Or they have a birthmark forever on their dick. And they think
it's
other people are like, oh, what's that? When they're about to, be intimate.
It's a scar, and they don't know that they even have that scar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like, what, you got a disease? And it's like, no, actually, I got a circumcision. I don't really agree with it. But.
It might have been, I think, maybe even the origins was like to try and eliminate pleasure.
Definitely.
So that it's like this religious thing, like doing this is bad. Whatever, sexual exploration is bad, so we'll limit your pleasure.
It's like
something.
They'll remember this subconsciously whenever they use this.
So you have less pleasure
that's
if you're
what,
circumcised?
Yeah, exactly.
What? You get less pleasure?
That's one of the selling points of circumcision in America. You guys familiar with Kellogg? He is the guy who made Kellogg Frosted Flakes.
Oh, I want some Frosted Flakes.
No, you don't. That guy was terrible.
Poison.
It tastes good though.
Yeah, but he's
Sugar.
the guy,
Sugar.
influential in getting circumcision.
What is that guy?
Yeah.
All right, how about Rice Krispies?
I know there's paint thinner in one of them, so yeah.
Is Rice Krispies the same guy?
I don't know. Yeah, I think there's places in the third world where they cut off the female clitoris so that she doesn't feel pleasure. So that
Are you kidding? That's
I think
bullshit.
they do. I don't know if it's a punishment or if it's like you're my wife and my wife only. And
It's actually mostly women doing it to little girls. Like here in America, it's mostly dads wanting it to be done to their little boys.
Yeah.
I mean, and they kind of do it for the same reasons as people do it here. They think it's cleanlier. They think it's hygienic. You know, that's they think a natural clit vagina is gross, and that's what a lot of people here think about the male penis. That an uncircumcised, or rather intact penis is gross. I mean, it's a misconception that female genital mutilation occurs just so she can't feel pleasure. And the thing about the clit is there's only a small piece of it that is out in the open. The rest of it is internal. So I would argue that even the more extreme forms of female genital mutilation probably don't really decrease pleasure as much as circumcision does for a man, you know? The foreskin, it's sizable. It's about what? 12 square inches of tissue, the adult foreskin. Like, a lot of people think it's just a snip of skin that doesn't matter, and that's not true.
Never pondered that.
Yeah.
You've been sheltered, James.
No, I just never went that route. Not that there's anything wrong, I just didn't.
Alright.
Moving on.
Moving on. Yes. That was a fun pun.
So, next topic, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. And our last topic will be on feminism.
Woo!
We'll be using Jordan Peterson as I forgot to put a timestamp. 132.
Came for his fans to, like a day after the video's posted, to just crash.
Yeah. Alright, so our next topic is about feminism, which is obviously a large topic, but we're going to sort of narrow it down through the scope of whatever Peterson says here. Maybe. We'll probably go further than that. Whatever. So this is Jordan Peterson on the backlash against masculinity.
I see a backlash against masculinity, and a sense that there's something toxic about masculinity.
What is this idea of being over? Why is society overly feminized?
Well, I didn't ever say that society was overly feminized. So if we're going to discuss my views, we should use my actual words. I believe that there's a danger in our society at the moment of making the assumption that our culture, for example, is a tyrannical patriarchy, which it is in some small part, and that any active engagement on the part of young men in particular is indistinguishable from an unacceptable power and dominance drive, which I don't believe.
But surely
all of that is inappropriate and incorrect.
If much of the power and authority over a very long historical period is lain with men, isn't it only inevitable that some men will get a little hacked off when women are given a stab at something approaching equality?
Well, that could be inevitable, but that doesn't make it right, and it's certainly not something that I support. So
So you think men's resentment is more important than women's effort to attain equality?
I'm not in favor of resentment at all. I think that if you're resentful, something's definitely wrong. Either you need to grow the hell up and take stock of your life, or you have some things to say to people that you haven't been saying.
You say science undoubtedly shows us that men and women have different traits, and there's a lot of science to back you up on that. But you say that because of that, men are hardwired to achieve success and to be successful in a way that women are not.
No, not at all. I've never said anything like that. I've said that there are biological differences between men and women that express themselves in temperament and in occupational choice, and that any attempt to enforce equality of outcome is unwarranted and ill-advised as a consequence.
And yet...
See, that's a weird thing. Isn't choice intelligence? So he is saying there's...
I guess there's no such thing as moral intelligence.
Why would someone choose to eat an apple instead of eating a plastic bottle? Right? You have an understanding of each. includes intelligence. So when he says that women just happen to choose whatever occupation or whatever, he's saying their intelligence is different. But he's trying to tell the host that he's not saying that.
Like he's like,
wait a minute, you are saying that, aren't you?
He said hardwired. I'm like, well, kind of like Peterson's like saying the same thing in a way.
I not hardwired, but they'll always choose us.
Like, yeah, that's basically like not understanding like free will.
I think what happened was he tried to sugarcoat talking to the other guy before the video started, and then the other guy was like, "No, I'm actually gonna call you out on your shit," and now he's like, "Oh no," he's backing himself up.
This host can't. I don't think he could handle Jordan Peterson. He's a sophisticated guy. I think.
Based on what he's saying here, it seems like he's completely discounting the idea that gender differences are not the result of innate biological differences, and that they are rather the result of us constructing gender to be that way.
When we talk about intelligence and things like that, like when I say a difference between men and women, I'd say it's a dick and a vagina. As far as intelligence and who you are as a person, that's not dictated by, I don't even think it's dictated by your biology at all. For anyone.
What about like the different hormone levels, like testosterone, estrogen? Does that have anything to do with your thought patterns, or based off emotions? Or
I might even think your mind. Yeah, I might even think your mind affects your hormonal level to some degree.
Like the hypothalamus. Kind of.
I mean, some people say yes. Some people would disagree. I mean, I think people we should listen to regarding that are people who have transitioned from one gender to another. I mean, there are some female to male transitions, and they talk about how when they started taking more testosterone, the additional hormones to complete their transition, that they did notice increased aggression and anger and things like that. And so, but then I wonder, is it really the hormones doing that, or like, is it something akin to the placebo effect, where you have this idea of what a man is and what a man is supposed to be, so as you perceive yourself and you say, oh, I'm becoming that, that's why you're acting differently in those
like
ways.
Based off the movies?
I would go that route.
I would agree more with that.
Like based off movies and gender roles, like you're like, oh, this is what a man's supposed to be, and then you change into a man.
Yeah. I mean, gender is, one could argue, it's basically just a performance, you know?
Free will.
I mean,
like, I'm sitting this way because...
You're a woman?
Yeah, because
I sit like this, too.
I was taught that this is how women sit.
I bet he's sitting like that right now. No, seriously, he's a leg, like, completely crossed.
Well, I used to sit like this in school. I had both these up in my...
I just did what was most comfortable, which was the...
Man-spreading?
Oh, no.
I just tried not to stick out at all. Just a generic person.
I sat in the way back.
Dude, he's the tallest one here, too. It's funny.
Oh, I slouch. I used to slouch a lot more. But
you should see how he drives. He's like...
I'm just hiding in plain sight.
It's a small
He's like
car.
all the way down here, dude. It's like a go-kart. It's great.
It's a small car, man.
No, I'm not making fun of him. It's funny.
Respect the pronoun.
What
says...
What?
I don't know how to say that.
Let me see.
I think that's Russian.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what that says either.
Elaborate.
We'll just say it's Bob or something. Hey, Bob.
It's like, you just assume my gender. Like, no.
Don't assume my gender, okay, guys?
Yeah, come on. What are you doing?
I think he's not putting the idea of free will into his argument, possibly.
Yeah, well...
Because if he did, then he would see how, like, as far as like biological differences, wouldn't have I would say, a say in like, oh well, Mary wants to play football. See, there's an imbalance here. It's like, nah. I think Mary just likes to crack people.
And there's certain things that, okay, I might not fully understand. But there are certain things where ideas can cross over with what someone else might say, to where I'm like, no, I know you're wrong here. Let's take the example of some guy gets on a podium and he has a worldwide audience. Everyone in the world is listening, and he says, everyone's favorite color is red. I'm like, that can't be true because mine is blue. Thus, I know that's wrong because I know something. I know something else. I know the exception to it.
Which is why there is such thing as absolutes.
Absolutely.
That's why I put such heavy emphasis on someone knowing who they are. Then they can dispel the idea that testosterone makes you do this, and estrogen makes you do this, and this, and this, and this. You're a girl, you do this. You're a boy, you do that. But if you know what self is, and you know, like, okay, that doesn't really apply here. That's not a biological function.
What about like your environment? Like with me, like I've grown up with 2 older sisters. They're, I wouldn't say highly opinionated, but like, you know, not your typical female.
I'm pretty highly opinionated.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I know. And I'll try to be polite, you know. And my mom's always like kind of alpha and always like has to put her idea onto you, like force it on you. So what I'm getting at is like my dad's like passive, so like my testosterone whatever, like I don't really act like a typical whatever you want to call a typical guy. It's like I'm the top dog, rah rah rah. This is you know, I see more as like my manners, or like in a situation, or like don't act out of turn, don't try to force myself on, and I'm very passive when it comes to like normal, like to society, normal male things. So I don't know if the environment controls how much of your testosterone or estrogen, whatever comes out.
Well, who's affected by the environment? The observer, correct?
Okay.
So then it starts with you first, then it's the environment. You had to be there for the environment to have an effect on you.
Well, I think what you're getting at is like nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Oh,
in
thank
terms
you.
of
Yeah.
our gender roles, right?
Well, yeah.
That's exactly what this guy's getting at. He seems to go with the nature approach and discount the nurture side of it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm different than a lot of males that I know.
Well,
also
it's very similar to how society conditions males or females to act a certain way, you know. So it's like
also in your
society.
scenario, there's a little interesting philosophical thing going on there. Your mom is providing the masculine role, and your dad's providing the feminine.
And then that begs the question: why do we have to define masculinity as assertiveness and anger and aggression, and femininity as passivity?
Well, I define masculine and feminine, first of all, not based on your fucking genitalia. That's first off. Secondly, it's just classification words, as in masculine being direct. You think of straight line, something like something in your face. Feminine is more like a mysterious, chaotic. It's more of like the ground of choice, right?
It's like, doctor, I feel horrible.
The masculine, and I don't mean male or female, I mean masculine, feminine. Masculine makes a choice. The feminine provides the environment where the choice is made. Provides all the choices in.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like going to doctor, I feel horrible.
That's
it's like,
metaphysical
well, there's
stuff.
nothing on your x-ray, you're fine. Goodbye. It's like, what?
Right? The masculine is the flashlight, and the feminine is the giant fucking cave you're trying to find your way in. As far as, and those are just terms, obviously I adopted them from someone who used it as male and female as well, but that's just how I determine them.
Well, some people would say that sex and gender are not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. One's a biological term, right? For, like, if you go to the doctor, you have to say this so that they understand your body parts. And one is how I recognize myself and how I want others to recognize me. Correct?
Yeah, basically, gender, I think it's a cultural construction, you know?
Well, what do you mean by that?
It's a cultural construct.
Something imposed on an individual? Like, you're a woman?
It's like
that?
It's like...
You're a man, you're a man.
It's like we all have idea of how we define femininity and how we define masculinity. And traditionally, femininity has been defined as, you know, being passive, and masculinity is being, you know, alpha and aggressive, etc.
Yeah, but in philosophical terms, that works. which is why I keep saying I don't mean male and female. I mean it's the same as saying left and right.
Well, like by cultural construct.
He's very left today,
but
or he's very right today.
By cultural construct, I just mean like these ideas we form as a culture of how one should behave if you fall into this category.
I got an example.
I think they've been stolen and bastardized for some other person's purpose.
I
think there's an actual like symbolic meaning.
So like there's like girls, not females. Girls like you stereotypical like selfie, and then like I gotta take a pic at the gym, say I'm doing something. But at the same token, like there's certain guys, like I'm not gonna lie, I like to take selfies or whatever. Like I like look at my own face, or like I'm in the gym, I'm like, oh yeah, I appreciate my body, whatever. So a lot of people are like, sure, like taking a lot of selfies, or like you're starting to judge, like, are you like, what's wrong with you? Like, why do you want to? So I guess they're kind of like gender rolling or judging me based off that, you know?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about that? Like, is there
if that's what they're doing, if that's
like,
your intentions, you know, that's like, you know, why do you care, dude? Yeah.
Yeah, it's you being you.
Well, it's just.
Are we gonna stop being you? Like, it doesn't make sense.
But like cultural, you know, like everybody.
Well, they don't have an understanding of masculine and feminine. They have a stereotypical boys like blue, girls like pink thoughts in their head. They don't have a full functioning philosophical understanding of masculine and feminine.
Was there something wrong with me that like,
in fact,
I like that?
In fact,
and a lot of other guys don't like that?
No, I mean, as long as you're not hurting anyone, then it's fine.
Basically, man, if you want to wear a dress, fucking.
No, I don't want to wear a dress. No.
No, just as an example.
I mean, I can use yin and yang. That might be more comfortable with people.
Yeah, so that's what I go with.
Because that's masculine and feminine. Supposed to be like, you know, the definitions of it.
I say that, then I use the doctor example. It's like, well, I can't see it. You just need this. Here's some pills. Have fun. Bye bye.
All right,
back to the video.
It's like, no cracked sternum here. Well, go home.
Some of the most successful societies, judged on contentment indices or indeed material success, are those, for example, in Scandinavia.
Where the temperamental differences between men and women are larger
but
than they are in any other society.
Well, so you say, you point out that in Scandinavia, many more women choose to be health workers than engineers, for example.
It's not what I say, it's what the large-scale scientific investigation has revealed.
Fair.
I mean, I could see that as parents having an influence. Just because they don't tell their daughter, you have to be a nurse, doesn't mean they're not influencing their kids. Right? Mom could have been a nurse or a teacher or something women jobs or whatever they call it.
Or the conversations they have with their peers or their husband or or boyfriend. You know.
What if mom came from an era where women had to work this specific job? They had no other choice but this job. And at a rate, then they have a kid, and the world changes the rules around. They're like, okay, everyone can do whatever they want. Like, well, I've been nursing all this whole time. I'm gonna do that too.
Well, it's like my grandma. It's like, you have to go to school. You have to go to school. If you don't get this paper, you can't do anything in this world. You gotta go to school.
That's not true.
Because that's what she grew up in. She's like, if you don't go to college, you're.
And what do we call that? Conditioning. Yeah. These guys don't bother to break down conditioning first before they say men do this and women do that. They just go with it and say that's just the way it is. It's hardwired. It's your biology, your genetics. That's what's happening.
There's no free will. No.
There's actually a lot of evidence showing that the brain isn't actually hardwired, and it's actually, you know, very plastic and malleable, and you can change your brain at any age.
That's what I've heard.
At any age?
At any age.
But don't you lose brain cells when you're older?
With depression.
Like, less things are firing, less neurons, less...
I remember
you know what I mean?
There's a documentary where
I don't know enough about that part of it.
And there's a documentary where they took older people with, I think it was dementia or Alzheimer's or something, and played music from that person's like childhood. And all of a sudden, they started responding to things, and they're a little more awake and shit like that.
What about your DNA? I've heard your DNA like kind of mutates every 10 years or something. This guy that used to be in Babe Ruth League, a father, said he was like a scientist or something.
I doubt that, because then a lot of prisoners would be out of jail right now. Right? If your DNA changed over a certain period of time.
I guess
how'd you know it was me? Huh?
I guess he was different, bro. I guess he was talking about like getting people like pregnant, I guess, like every 10 years, like you're
I think
genes are different. Like,
I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
I think your cells die and get replaced every so often.
Okay.
I've heard that theory.
I just remember him saying that to me like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, huh? You know? Yeah, like one of those coffee top hats, like look around like Fievel, like the movie Fievel.
Yeah.
He stirs one cup.
No. They stir the cup
Never have his
with
own
him and you say,
party. He'd always get a ride. He said he was coming from the city all the time. He's always doing his job in the city. I'm just like,
that was just someone you ran into that said that?
no, it's a father. One of the kids in the Babe Ruth League. And he was from Liberty, New York.
But
he said he was like
overall, I think I don't think consciousness arrives in the brain from the brain, anyways. I think it's self, that internal observer, which communicates to the brain, which communicates to the body, and on and so forth. But that's weird, spiritual, woo woo, whatever.
If only the turfling monkey guy was here. You know, you can get him and his fans to.
Look at that guy's neck.
Anyways, continuing.
But equally, Scandinavia is full of societies, one could point to Norway, where they've made a specific legislative effort for societies, one could point to Norway, where they've made a specific legislative effort, for example, with a quota of 40% of women on corporate boards or a quota for women to be in parliament. They've specifically engaged in social engineering, and it seems to be working, and it seems to be well, forgive me, but Norway is top of every contentment index that we see across the world.
Do you agree with that? Them saying, okay, we have this collaboration of CEOs. We need at least half of them to be women. We need 20% to be black, whatever.
That's ridiculous.
20% to be Latino.
What's social engineering?
Do you agree with that?
I mean, it's one way of trying to level the playing field. I mean, I don't know
I think it's
that much about it.
Well, I think they're doing that in Disney movies now.
I think it's ideas
like
that
they're
should be
redoing Disney movies and having different colors.
That would be the equality of outcome thing we were talking about.
Yeah,
before.
like basically it's like affirmative action, but for gender instead of race.
What if they're not qualified? What if they're not as good as the people they're replacing?
I mean, we'd have to put in like contingencies on this is what we'll do in this circumstance. I mean, I think it would be better to be put in a range, like 40 to 60% of either gender, and that way you have 20% leeway to, address that, like make sure you're getting the best person for the job and not just filling a quota.
Okay. And wait, are you talking about the people who get the actual job or the interview process? Like 40 to 50% women there because
I'm saying if
just to have the opportunity to do it.
If instead of being like a hard 50% have to be women, 50% have to be men, instead of doing that, leave it open to somebody's interpretation. So like the lowest you could have of like women, for instance, you could be at 40%, and it's not a hard percentage, so you don't have to necessarily fill a quota. And like you can avoid that situation of, I have to hire a woman, but she's not the best person for the job. This man would be better, but there's this quota. You would avoid that situation.
Well, in my opinion, you would avoid it by just going for the best possible candidates. And I think women will fill into those roles.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, when you have white men controlling most of the power for like most of civilization, they're going to be so biased, and they're not going to be able to look at the situation objectively. And
yes, but I'm looking in my perfect world scenario to where there's no people break down their own conditioning, and they're not heavily biased for someone that just looks like them, and they literally just pick out the best candidate, just looking at it as like some robotic thing.
But the thing is, everyone has biases. We all have a bias. I mean, it's just we don't have the same bias to the same level of severity.
I would say I'm biased.
Yes, and
some things like the Yankees, but
but the tricky thing is you're like not aware of your own bias. So how can you overcome
I disagree
it?
with that one.
Sure.
I disagree with that one.
I mean, some people are aware of their own bias, but an example that just came to mind, there was this black police officer, and he realized that he was treating, black people in the public the same way like a white officer would treat them. He didn't even realize he had that bias until he underwent training to address it. He didn't even want to admit that he had that bias. It's just like, how, if you don't know you're biased, how can you know unless someone else points it out to you?
That's completely wrong to me. That's completely wrong on a philosophical level of self-observation. You don't need other people. What you need is a psychological term called just noticeable difference, as in you just need to be able to conflict two different things. Say, that one's one thing and one's another thing. Whether it's, say, you're looking internally, it's like you should be able to tell whether it's, okay, that's my ego, okay, that's my subconscious sending content, that's my, I'm using psychological and metaphysical words like a shadow or the self. Okay, that's the whole me saying this. You can point those things out once you go through the observations and the studying of yourself. I truly believe that.
I would have said like individual that knows themselves wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Rather than like a personal experience that they favor more.
And then the bias would come in the form of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
We all have everything, but it would come in the form of, I like the Yankees over the Red Sox.
Like, dude, home runs are the best. Now, dude, dunks. 360 dunks are the best.
Yeah. That's where the bias would live. But certain things would be, in a way, objective.
So you're aware of all of your biases?
Yeah.
What are you biased about?
I like the Atlanta Braves over everyone else. Fuck every other Major League Baseball team. The Braves. I didn't wear my Braves hat today.
You didn't shell out today, huh?
I'm biased towards good over evil or bad. 100% know that. Once again, there'd be a lot of details, right? Because we're not robots. We're not simple input-output machines. One idea that we think of can branch out into a million different ideas. So it's understanding one solid self that even if I haven't approached the scenario, I know what I would do in whatever given scenario. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
I'll have to think on it.
Make sure not in the red.
No, we're good. All right. Moving on.
Moving on.
Okay, so first of all, Norway has plenty of oil money, which is definitely contributing to that.
Yeah.
And second, it depends on what you mean by working. There's no evidence, for example, that the legislation that was designed to increase the number of women on boards has produced any movement whatsoever in the number of women who hold managerial and administrative positions in Norway.
Index that we see across the world.
Well, okay, so first of all, Norway has plenty of oil money, which is definitely contributing to that. And second, it depends on what you mean by working. There's no evidence, for example, that the legislation that was designed to increase the number of women on boards has produced any movement whatsoever in the number of women who hold managerial and administrative positions in Norway. The theory was that as societies became more egalitarian, that men and women would become more the same. But that isn't what's happened. What's happened is the biggest differences between men and women now, temperamentally and in terms of their own interests, have manifested themselves in the Scandinavian countries. And
we haven't addressed conditioning yet to say that.
No, yeah, he hasn't once addressed.
Just because we're in the more recent history becoming more egalitarian doesn't mean it's always been like that. In order for him to say that women naturally do this and move to these occupations, and men do this and naturally move towards these occupations, you have to say from year zero they were completely socially equal.
I also he's using statistics to make something based off of someone's the individual, which is can't do that.
Now, if you're talking about physicality, as in like cavemen had the brute strength to control what women do or not do, that's different than what we're talking about here. We're talking about behavior, right? These are behavior issues he's talking about, not physicality necessarily. Not who can lift the heaviest rock. It's who can be a CEO, who can be a scientist.
Yeah.
That's behavioral, that's intelligence, that's not That's not physicality to me.
It's that one guy talking about power moves. It's
That's
like,
just choice.
Shut the fuck up.
That's choice in what you're interested in. Now, who are you? That's the question I'm trying to ask.
Like, who are you? I'm a dominant male. It's like, that's no. I'll see you later, man. Gordon Gekko. Yeah. That's it. It's like, dude, you shouldn't even know who you are yet.
So what that will mean is that men and women will make different choices in occupation if you let them have free choice. Now, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to stop that from happening? Is that the feminist perspective?
Let's get back to what...
Is it?
No.
Okay. Thought I'd ask.
that I used before and ask you directly, do you approve of, do you think it's a dangerous word, equality, this word equality?
I do approve of equality of opportunity, but I think that equality of outcome considerations are detestable and dangerous beyond belief.
Dangerous.
I mean, is anyone arguing that you should give a woman a job because she's a woman, and if she sucks at her job, you should just let her keep doing it? I mean, is anyone arguing that, though?
Nah.
I don't think so.
I haven't heard it.
But these guys post that argument up here so that they can argue against it and sound smart.
Also understanding how they came to this position, you know? It's like, oh, you're here because of the silly people over here yelling and screaming, you know? And now he has a big-ass fan base like Crowder, Shapiro, and so forth.
Why is he super popular? Well, he went on a college campus and argued with college kids. Ben Shapiro went on college campuses, arguing with Steven Crowder, arguing with college kids.
Let's go to UAlbany.
It's like, fuck.
We'll be rich, man. Give us like 2 months. UAlbany. And we'll go whatever school John's going to.
And
we'll argue that.
Yeah. And then the ones that would probably put up an argument against these guys are probably in their dorms, like, what's the meaning of life? Studying shit like that. Like, what's the meaning of all this? Why am I here?
He didn't really get into the backlash against masculinity in this video.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at all.
I feel like this video is mislabeled.
Do you have any comments on that?
Clickbait.
I mean, what does he mean by backlash against masculinity? I don't know.
I think he's saying that society's trying to shift towards almost like affirmative action with women or whatever. Or that men being men is now scrutinized.
What, James?
Oh, do we have a comment?
What did you say?
Is gender a social construct? Yes. Yes, it is.
And that's that.
I think at the beginning of the video he says toxic masculinity in passing. I think he said that. And I think that's
Want to go back?
interesting to discuss that.
Well, let's hear it.
Backlash against masculinity, and a sense that there's something toxic about
What is
masculinity.
this idea of being
Yeah,
over?
something toxic
Why?
about masculinity. I mean, I think that's an interesting question. Kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, I think it's problematic to have masculinity and femininity when you define masculinity as, you know, the more aggressive one, the strong one, and the feminine as the passive and the weak, you know?
Well, that's just, well, to me, that's ignorance.
Well, it's just like, then you get into things like emasculation, where like, if a woman is the breadwinner in the home and the dad is a stay-at-home dad taking care of the kids, a man might feel emasculated. And emasculation, like, what is that exactly? What does that mean? It's when a woman goes outside the preconceived gender construct of defining the woman as weak and passive. I think it's problematic to have masculinity when you construct it as depending on femininity being weak.
I agree with you, which is why I was trying to explain my philosophical understanding of masculinity or masculine and feminine. Yeah, that's why I did that, because I think everyone else just thinks dicks and vaginas.
Like Ben. You're a man. It's like, dude.
It's like, what is aggressiveness? Is that a dick or vagina question, or is it a human question? That's a human question. happiness, sadness, all these things they're ethereal, right? They're metaphysical. They're non-physical things. I can't hand you a cup of happiness.
I should have showed to the Coach Red Pill guy.
Oh no.
That guy's
yeah.
That's a piece of.
I think we should stay away from those
okay.
until after an open discussion or whatever.
That guy is ridiculous.
Okay. So, did you give a definition for feminism? Like just a small one?
Oh,
So these guys can riff off that or whatever. Right.
How do we define feminism, y'all? A feminist is someone who believes in equality of the sexes and or genders, right? That all people should have the same rights, the same choices, as anyone else, and that your gender or sex shouldn't preclude you from doing what you want to do in life.
Okay, so I remember we were debating a MGTOW guy. I don't know if you know what that is. Men going their own way. They call it MGTOW. It's like men's rights movement.
Okay.
Something similar to that.
Silly.
But the lady in the chat defined it basically the same as you did. Now, when I hear, not this guy, but Jordan Peterson and Steven Crowder, guys like that, they define, the only thing you ever hear is something negative when it comes to feminists or feminism, which is why the guy we were talking to in that MGTOW debate was saying, whatever, when you start acting like feminists and the feminist movement and all that, it's because they basically took your word and placed it on something they consider negative.
So if the loudest person in the room does something.
Sort of like they do with when they say the left. Like, the left. Say what? Well, the left used to be like, I thought that meant like anti-war and whatever, pro-peace. But now it just means some monster that's looming over the country.
The loudest guy in the room, I don't know how he got there, or her.
Yeah. So they're essentially hijacking terms.
Exactly.
I think.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. So now if you call yourself a feminist in public, these internet guys are going to have like a preconceived notion of what you believe. They're going to say, oh, she's just trying to get affirmative action for women. They want automatically just give them female president, female cabinet, female senate, female house.
Yeah, that's interesting because they do recognize there is a power imbalance. I mean, they're basically implying that, yeah, we do see there's a power imbalance. We just don't want women to be on top. Yeah. We want to keep it the way it is.
Like hasn't there been laws in almost all cultures that said women can't do these certain things? Even if they didn't write it down on paper, it was still just understood as a society that women don't do this. How come these guys don't consider conditioning carrying on for that amount of time? Mm-hmm. It seems like that to me. Like, that's very possible. It's like people talking about, like, racism is over. It's like, dude, like Jim Crow was in the 1960s. It's not that far away. Yeah. But you just think it's just all gone all of a sudden? Like, conditioning things can carry on. It might even carry on in a semi-genetic type of way.
Yeah, the argument is, like, they're aware of it.
Yeah.
At whatever point, then there goes your fans, so you're not going to say anything.
Yeah. That is a large portion of it. These guys appeasing their fan base. What do you got, Dan? You think about feminism or feminists?
Or toxic masculinity. We didn't really get into the difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity.
Okay.
Toxic what do we have a definition for that?
Oh yeah, we didn't really get into toxic masculinity, did we?
Toxic masculinity.
It's. I mean, the way I understand it is it's. You throw like a girl. You run like a girl. It's when you.
Oh, we already talked about it.
When you shame men for doing anything that is deemed to be feminine, like you were saying, the selfie thing. He was being
too many manners.
Okay.
For hesitate. Doing something feminine.
Hesitate being like a lion type
preconceived
alpha
idea.
Yeah, that, and also sometimes it's something carried on without actually having the same intention or definition of it. Like, you could hear kids like saying curse words, like "oh, you wussy" or something like that. They just say it to insult them. They're not really thinking of women.
But why is it an insult
women
to be female?
But they're not thinking of it as in female.
Yeah, you just accept.
It's like South Park.
It's a question that it would be an insult to call a man a girl.
A lot of people might not consider that, but I do get what you're saying. Imagine all the million kids watching The Sandlot.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like South Park with the bikers. Like, rah, 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 rah. It's like, dude, you're not gay. You're just being a fag. It's like, whoa. It's like 4th grade.
So what else on toxic? I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, establishing what toxic is.
Because like, oh, you punch like a girl, but then it's like, does Cyborg punch like a girl?
Nope.
How about Rose Namajunas? Does she punch like a girl?
Nope.
So it's like,
Yeah,
but they're girls.
Gabrielle Sanchez.
So it's like what? Huh?
The big woman who fights the small Japanese.
Yeah.
6'3".
Gabby Sanchez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, god damn.
Well, there's definitely females that have masculinity to them.
Like what?
I don't define those as masculinity though.
I was just trying to figure
I define muscles as muscles.
Like Namajunas looks like a.
It's like, oh, she can bench
Yeah.
240. He can bench 240.
Well, for me, like, toxic masculinity becomes really problematic when you label certain emotions as masculine or feminine. I mean, every human being, unless there's something wrong with you, every normal, healthy human being, you're going to have the same ability to feel all the same emotions. But with toxic masculinity, it kind of constrains men, puts them in this narrowly defined, narrow little box of like, you can't do anything deemed feminine. You can't be open about your emotions and your feelings, and that goes against human nature. I mean,
I agree with you, but I also use the same word for what I don't mean it the same way they do. Like, once again, I go back to philosophical, and I use it in a yin-yang type of way. I say feminine would be internal, as in it's hidden, no one else can see it. And masculine is more of, I'm out here in the world. I'm expressing something externally. Now with each thing, obviously, with each masculine expression, there's always feminine right next to it. With each feminine expression, there's always masculine next to it. But, I think it just gets confusing and weird. Right? To throw a punch would be masculine, but then it's like, why'd you throw the punch? That's the feminine. That's the hidden. That's the chaotic. That's what the fuck was that for?
That's like intelligence regarding whatever was being done.
It has nothing to do with genitalia or anything. But I don't use, my intention isn't to say it like in the same way, like if you're a guy and you're emotional, that it's like, oh, you're acting like a girl or whatever. It's like, nah, you're just being emotional, that's all.
yeah, everyone has emotions. It's normal. It's healthy. It's natural.
I don't know if everyone has emotions.
Unless you're a psychopath, but that's a very small percentage of the population.
Yeah.
Just call the CEO of Exxon. It's like, hey man, listen. Just want to talk to you for a minute. Just hangs up. He's going to bed. You realize it really wasn't.
Which country are we raping today?
It wasn't someone else on the phone. It's
Or
like,
that
listen,
said something.
I gotta talk to you.
Yeah.
CEO of Nike.
Well, did we go over everything, guys?
Yeah, my brain's kind of fried.
Your brain, yes.
In time out.
Your mind is fried. Your brain is separate from your mind, Dan.
Fine, my mind is fried.
Okay, I guess that's it.
Alright.
Thanks for a while. I forgot to do this. I need to see myself celebrate. I was probably like here the entire video. I was probably like right here. This is an empty screen.
I went
Oh,
from
no.
this. I went from this to this to.
He's been off screen the whole time.
I've been like right here. You'll get the audio, whatever. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you feel like. Always leave comments. We love arguments. She won't be here to defend herself, so if you
maybe on the phone though, just call her up.
Email me.
I'll just leave her phone number in the comment section. Please call anytime you feel like. And no one caught that at all, or it just wasn't funny.
No, totally put my phone number in the comments.
So yeah, just go ahead and do that. All right, and as always,
thumbs down.
Wait, why is that? All right, whatever. Give this video a thumbs down. Wasn't even the right one. Where'd it go?